This is a story about quiet resilience, about the kind of strength no one sees until it's the only thing left standing. At a Christmas dinner meant to bring family together, I was told right in front of everyone that I was a burden, that I didn't belong. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just took my coat and left. Years later, I sat across a polished boardroom table and watched their resumes roll in one by one, each stamped with desperation. This isn't a revenge story. It's a reckoning. If you've ever been the afterthought, the invisible one, the family's disappointment, I hope this story helps you find your voice again. Subscribe to Reddit Family Tales for more stories that speak the truth. Nobody else wants to say out loud. It was the sound of a wine glass tapping against a ring, just that simple, hollow clink. That's what I remember most. Not the cold ham, not the too sweet cranberry sauce, just the sound of my mother lifting her glass to call for silence, her diamond wedding band striking the crystal like it was a gavel. Before dessert, she said, beaming down the table, I'd like to thank everyone for being here except maybe the IRS. Laughter, all the usual smiles, the practiced chuckles. Then she looked at me. Her smile flattened just enough to make it sting. And of course, we're all grateful for Emily being here too. Though I know it's hard to leave your schedule of, what do you do these days again? She knew. Of course she knew I was between contracts. Freelance copywriting, when it came in, I'd taken a temp job 2 weeks earlier at a startup downtown. No benefits, no stability. But I was trying. Before I could answer, my brother Ben cut in. Mom Emily's doing what she does best, collecting degrees and unpaid internships. More laughter. Someone passed the butter. Someone else passed the wine. I sat there and took it like I always did. The table was too long, the chairs too formal, the house too spotless to feel like home anymore. My name had become a kind of inside joke. A punchline passed between wine sips and second helpings. And then came the line. The one that finally made my fork stop halfway to my mouth. My father leaned back in his chair, folded his napkin in half like he was closing a file, and said to no one in particular, We've done what we can, but some children just take longer to launch. You can't carry dead weight forever. Dead weight. He didn't even say it angrily. He said it like he was reading the side of a box. I looked at my sister Rachel. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She never does when it gets uncomfortable. She just stared at her phone, probably texting her fiancé under the table. I stood up without thinking. No scene, no screaming. Just a slow shaking breath and a quiet. Excuse me. No one followed me. I walked out into the cold and down the stone steps in those ridiculous heels I'd worn just to make a good impression. The ones that pinched by the second course, I remember thinking how no one even noticed I'd brought a homemade dessert. Still warm when I arrived, still untouched when I left. That night, I cried in my car for exactly 3 minutes. Then I pulled myself together. I had work the next day. A temp job, windowless office, fluorescent lights. But it was mine, and it was where everything started to change. The office smelled like burnt coffee and synthetic carpet. My ID badge didn't unlock any real doors, just the temp entrance near the freight elevator. I wasn't even in the system long enough to get a company email. Just a folding desk near the hallway printer and a borrowed login to access spreadsheets no one else wanted to clean up. But the silence helped me think I was invisible at Christmas, and I was invisible here too. Just quieter. Less painful. No one asked about my resume. My goals, my family, no one laughed when I ate lunch alone. In fact, no one noticed at all. There's something liberating about being underestimated. People say invisibility is a curse, but sometimes it gives you room to move, to learn to observe. While the full-timers chased deadlines and drowned in meetings, I started reading everything. Product specs, investor decks, code review memos left on the printer. I learned what the company did better than their own interns. It was a scrappy health tech startup trying to build software to manage elder care, scheduling a chaotic puzzle of needs, tasks, and logistics that no one had solved yet. They had the right idea, but their copy? Sloppy, cluttered, emotionless. So I rewrote a landing page one afternoon just for myself. Just to see if I could do it better. I didn't tell anyone. But the next morning, one of the engineers noticed it on my open tab. He read it, printed it, and by lunchtime, it was sitting on the CTO's desk. 2 hours later, I was called into a real meeting room. Not for a firing, not for a warning, but for an offer. "Did you write this?" the CTO asked, pointing to the copy. I nodded, terrified. He smiled, not the smug kind my brother always wore, but the real kind. The kind that makes your heart thud in your chest. "Stick around," he said. "You've got a voice people trust. We need that." And just like that, I became more than a temp. No title change, no raise. Just more responsibilities, more eyes watching. I showed up early, stayed late, took home printouts, highlighted workflows, sat in on meetings even when I wasn't invited. Just quiet enough not to get kicked out. I started asking questions. No one else was asking. And sometimes I had answers. They didn't have time to find. No one at home knew. I didn't tell them what was there to say. That I was learning what it meant to build something from the inside out. That someone saw value in what I brought to the table, even when it wasn't dinner. No, they wouldn't get it. Not yet. But one person did. Her name was Priya, a senior engineer, sharp, quiet, always in black turtlenecks. She saw something in me and didn't flinch when I asked if I could help write internal documentation. Most writers wait for permission. She said, "You just did the work. We started eating lunch together in the break room." She didn't ask about my personal life. She just passed me reports and said, "Tear this apart. Make it sing." So I did week after week. The thing about small companies is, when they grow, they remember who grew with them. So when the Series A funding came through, the founder made a list. People to keep, people to let go. People to promote. And somehow my name was on the first list. Not because I was loud, not because I had connections, because I stayed, because I helped. They gave me a full-time offer. Real salary, real email. A new badge that opened every door on every floor. The first person I told wasn't my mother. It was Priya. She looked up from her keyboard, nodded once, and said, "Good, now let's make sure they never forget why they hired you." And I didn't. Not then. Not ever. I kept my head down and my hands busy. We were building something real messy and ambitious and maddening at times. But it had a heartbeat. Our software started working. Actual families began using it. Emails trickled in from adult children across the country. Finally, I can track my dad's appointments without calling 5 different people. We weren't just writing code. We were stitching broken systems together. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like dead weight. I felt necessary. Like if I disappeared, something would actually fall apart. I still didn't talk to my family much. Rachel got married that spring. I wasn't invited. Ben posted a smug photo from the reception, all white linen and champagne, with the caption, "Family is everything." I didn't comment. Instead, I sent a small wedding gift unwrapped unannounced. A custom-engraved wine opener in a black velvet box. The note read, "Hope, this helps you open up." No one replied, but I didn't expect them to. At work, things moved fast. Our founders shifted. Our leadership changed. And then one day, over bad takeout in a conference room, Priya looked at me and said, "You know, we could do this better." I thought she was joking. She wasn't. She had already started sketching a new architecture on the back of a napkin. That night, we stayed in the office until 2 a.m., mapping out the bones of a new platform. Smarter, simpler, built for real-world caregivers. Not just IT departments. We called it Kindesk, a desk for family where everyone belonged. By the time we both resigned 6 months later, I had saved every paycheck, every bonus, and every freelance gig into a fund labeled Simply Leap. And we leapt. We launched Kindesk from a co-working space with no central heating, but we had fire. We built. We begged. We borrowed. We pitched the same boardrooms that once overlooked me, now leaned in when I spoke. Turns out, when you've spent years being invisible, you learn how to make people feel seen. That's what I brought to Kindesk. And slowly word spread. A contract here. A feature article there. Then came the real break. A multi-state elder care organization licensed our platform. That deal changed everything. And then came the part I didn't expect. My brother Ben, he showed up in my inbox subject line. Hey cuz referral request. He wasn't even pretending to be clever. I read it 3 times before I said anything to Priya. He's applying to Kindesk, I said. She blinked. Your brother. Yup. He doesn't know it's me. He thinks it's just another hiring manager named Emily. She shrugged. Well, is he qualified? Not really, I said. But he's persistent. It wasn't just Ben. A week later, Rachel's resume came through different last name, but the same hollow bullet points and overpolished language. And then my father. His financial consultancy had collapsed after a lawsuit. He was looking for a strategic communications advisor role. I sat at my desk for a long time that night, looking at those names. The same names that once laughed across a Christmas table while I counted the days until my next freelance gig. And now, they needed me. But I didn't reply. Not yet, because I needed to know, was I about to become them? I didn't sleep the night before Ben's interview. Not because I was nervous. Not because I was angry. But because I realized I wasn't angry at all. That surprised me. What I felt sitting in my quiet apartment, tea cooling on the counter, was something closer to grief. Grief for the years I spent trying to prove I mattered. Grief for the girl I used to be, the one who brought homemade dessert to a table that didn't have space for her. When Ben walked into the interview room, he didn't recognize me right away. I kept my nameplate turned just slightly half-covered by a notepad. He looked around like he owned the place, smiling that easy smile he used to wear in high school when he forgot his homework and knew Mom would talk the teacher down for him. Thanks for meeting with me. He said, I've been following Kindesk since your last funding round. Impressive growth. I nodded. Tell me, I said, why now? Why Kindesk? He launched into a rehearsed pitch. Something about purpose-driven culture and wanting to make a difference, but his eyes never really connected with mine. I let him talk. I let him build his little tower of borrowed phrases and inflated achievements. Then I leaned forward. I noticed you listed family communication challenges as one of your areas of insight. I said. Ben smiled. Yeah, I've seen firsthand how difficult that can be. Misunderstandings, people feeling left out. You know how it is? I looked at him for a long moment. And then slowly I turned the nameplate around. His face fell like a switch had been thrown, Emily. He said. I didn't speak. I just watched as recognition sunk into him like cold water. He cleared his throat. I didn't know. I mean, no one told me. Why would they? I said softly. I was just the burden, remember? He opened his mouth to say something, closed it again. For the first time in maybe 15 years, Ben was speechless. I let the silence hang there. Then I stood. Thank you for coming in, I said. We'll let you know. I walked him to the door. Just before he left, he turned to me and said, I didn't mean what I said that night. We were just joking. I know I said that was the problem. He didn't ask for a second chance. He didn't have to. We both knew this wasn't really about a job. Later that afternoon, I found Rachel's application again. I skimmed it. It was full of ambition, vague achievements, and zero accountability, but something in me softened when I read her cover letter. After taking time off to support my husband through a difficult illness, I'm ready to return to meaningful work. I hadn't known, no one had told me. So I did something that surprised even me. I called her. When she picked up, I heard the hesitation in her voice. Emily, I read your application. I said, I'm not here to talk about the past. I just want to know, are you okay? A pause. Then, no, not really. And just like that, the walls cracked. Not all the way. Not enough for healing, but enough for honesty. We talked for nearly an hour. Not about jobs. Not about Kindesk. Just about life. About the things we carry. The things we drop, the things we can't put into words at Christmas dinner. That night, I sat alone in the conference room with the lights off, watching the city move outside the glass. I thought about the girl I used to be, and I whispered just to the silence. You made it a week before Christmas, an envelope arrived at the office. Real paper, ivory cardstock. My name handwritten in looping cursive I hadn't seen in years. It was from my mother. The invitation was formal, almost sterile. You are cordially invited to the Brooks family Christmas Eve dinner. No apology, no warmth. Just a time, a place, and a closing line. It would mean a great deal to have everyone together again. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't feel anger. Not exactly, more like exhaustion. The kind that sits behind your eyes and makes even the idea of small talk feel heavy. Priya found me holding the envelope that afternoon, still unopened. You going? She asked. I shrugged. I don't know. Do you want to? I didn't answer because part of me did and part of me didn't. And the part that did wasn't sure if it was for closure or revenge. Go, she said quietly, but don't go for them. Go for you. So I went. Not in the heels that pinched. Not in desperation, I went in flats. In peace, the house looked the same, though somehow smaller. The ornaments were all perfectly arranged. The table had its usual show of candles and crystal. But the energy was different, tighter. Like no one quite knew how to act. Now that I wasn't the one sitting in the smallest chair. Rachel was there, looking thinner, quieter. She met my eyes across the room and offered a faint smile. Not forced, not bright. Just real, and for now that was enough. Ben hovered near the bar, nursing something amber. My father stood by the fireplace talking about real estate with someone I didn't recognize. Then my mother approached. She looked older. Not in the wrinkled way, in the hollowed way. Like time had thinned something behind her eyes. Emily, she said. Just my name. No fanfare, no pretense. I waited. She took a slow breath. I hear you're doing well. I nodded. She looked down at her hands. Her nails were still perfect, manicured into soft pink ovals. I didn't know how to reach you. She said, You had my number. I replied, Yes, but I didn't know how to use it. That silence between us stretched, but for the first time it wasn't hostile. Just honest. Did you mean what you said that night? I asked finally. That I was a burden. She closed her eyes just for a moment. No, she said. But I didn't stop it either. That more than anything felt like the truth. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. But we stood there, two women shaped by silence, each trying to speak a language neither had learned. Dinner came and went. Polite conversation, too much silverware. A child spilled juice and cried. And somewhere between the roasted carrots and the peppermint mousse, someone made a joke about kids who never launch. Everyone laughed except Ben. He didn't even crack a smile. Instead, he looked at me across the table, and for the first time, I saw shame in his face. Real, unpolished shame. After dessert, I excused myself and stepped outside into the snow. The sky was soft and gray. The world muffled. Rachel followed me out. I heard you hired Dad, she said quietly. I nodded. Part-time, remote, no title. Why, she asked, I thought about it, and then I said, because I can. Because I remember what it feels like to need a door to open and find nothing but walls. She looked at me like she was seeing me clearly for the first time in her life. You're not who I thought you'd be. She said, I know, I replied. I'm not who I thought I'd be either. In the weeks after Christmas, things didn't change overnight. Families don't pivot like startups. They shift in strange, uneven increments, too slow to track, too sudden to prepare for. But something had cracked open. A tiny thread of awareness began to stretch between us. Thin, but visible. My father submitted his onboarding paperwork late twice. He called me Miss Brooks in emails like formality could mask discomfort. I didn't correct him. Instead, I looped him in on small, manageable projects. Internal reporting, market research summaries. Things no one else wanted, but he could still handle. Not because I owed him anything, but because I remembered what it felt like to be discarded. He did the work quietly, and for once he didn't tell me how to fix it, he just did it. Ben didn't get the job, not because I blocked him. He wasn't qualified, too much ego, too little humility. But he did send a message a week later. No subject line, no signature, just one sentence. I get it now. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Sometimes silence is a boundary. Sometimes it's grace, Rachel. And I began to talk. Not often. Not easily, but in pieces. She asked about the company, about how I manage stress, about what it meant to build something from nothing. She never asked for a job. She just asked to understand. And slowly we stitched together a kind of sisterhood. Not the kind you find in childhood, but the kind that emerges later when you've both been through separate fires and survived. One night, I walked the empty Kindesk office after hours the lights dimmed to amber. The hum of the servers steady like a heartbeat. I stood in front of the large whiteboard wall where we had once scribbled early ideas. Bad names, broken diagrams, dreams we weren't sure how to fund. I saw my own handwriting still faint in the corner. Make something that makes people feel seen. That was all I'd ever wanted. Not applause, not revenge, just to be seen. And now I was not, because I made them regret what they said, but because I didn't let it become the last word in my story. There's a quiet kind of power in that, one they'll never fully understand. I walked past the break room where Priya had once slid folders across a plastic table and told me, tear this apart. Now she had her own office down the hall. Now we shared decisions. Equity, responsibility, legacy. We had offers on the table. Partnerships, even talk of acquisition. But I wasn't in a hurry. Not anymore, because I'd already won the only thing that mattered. I had become the kind of person I used to think only lived in other people's stories. The following December, we hosted a Kindesk holiday dinner. Not a party, not a fundraiser. Just a long table in the old conference room transformed with candlelight and music and mismatched plates from thrift stores Priya and I had collected over the year. Everyone brought something: roasted vegetables, spice cider. Awkward but earnest stories. There was no head of the table. No performance. Just people. Just warmth. As I moved around the room, I saw them. My team. My chosen family. Some had lost parents that year. Some had become parents. Some were spending their first holidays alone and didn't want to be. We all had our reasons for showing up. And then I saw Rachel. She wasn't an employee. She wasn't even an applicant. She came because I'd invited her. She stood near the window holding a cup of cocoa, staring out into the city lights. I used to think you were the weak one, she said when I walked over. I smiled. She looked at me puzzled. But that's the thing about weakness. I said, you don't stay in it forever. You either grow through it, or it grows over you. She nodded slowly like she understood. And maybe she did. As the night wound down, someone started singing an old holiday song off-key, but joyfully. Laughter echoed against the glass walls. Someone spilled punch. Someone else offered to mop it up, and I just stood there in the middle of it all, letting it settle over me like snow. Not sadness, not victory. Just peace. Years ago, I sat at a table where I was the joke, the burden, the one who hadn't launched. Now I sit at a table I built. A table with room for everyone, including the broken, the underestimated, the ones still figuring it out. That's what Kindesk became, not just software. A lifeline. A second chance. Sometimes we spend our whole lives waiting to be invited, to be chosen, to be seen. But sometimes the real healing begins when you stop waiting and start building your own table. One chair, one story, one quiet act of courage at a time. If this story moved something in you, if you've ever been dismissed, overlooked, or called a burden, you're not alone. There's power in quiet resilience and dignity in rising without fanfare. For more real stories like this one told from the heart, subscribe to Reddit Family Tales, where the unheard voices finally get to speak.